Welcome to this episode of the Strong Kind Podcast. This episode is with Mike Sell. Mike is a gym owner, a coach, a bodybuilder. He's also a foodie and a self-proclaimed food critic. We had a great discussion. Mike is a friend of mine. Um, and he actually did a prep for a bodybuilding show, only eating Chick-fil-A. For 16 weeks, he only ate Chick-fil-A. So we got into some really good discussion about nutrition and how much dogma there is in nutrition and how honestly you can achieve your goals in a very flexible manner. You just have to learn to play the game. We also talked about Mike's training journey and developing positive habits that are beneficial in life. It's a really practical episode, a lot of good tips on getting into a good gym routine and a good nutrition routine in this one. So I hope you enjoy it. If you're struggling with pain or rehab, please reach out to me on Instagram at drdave.strengthandkindness. I appreciate you being here so much. Thanks for your time. Peace. All right, Mike Sell, welcome to the podcast, man. I got a bunch of stuff I want to ask you, but I think the most pertinent one, or the one that made me want to just talk to you, is your cut using only Chick-fil-A.
Yeah,
I want to get more into nutrition and
sure.
bodybuilding and all sorts of stuff, but what about that? Well, first and foremost, Chick-fil-A is awesome, right? But
Mhm.
what made you be like, I can do a cut using only Chick-fil-A, and I'm gonna show people that you can achieve results with that type of mentality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. So I think part of my motivation is oftentimes when we look at nutrition and you're surfing the internet, people displace a lot of morality onto food being good or bad. People also displace this notion that based on marketing and whatnot, something might be better or worse for you while missing context to the specifics as far as how much you're eating, what dosages of certain food you're eating, etc. At the time when I decided to do the Chick-fil-A diet, I think it's still a prevalent topic that is debated amongst people on the internet today, is this idea that seed oils increase inflammatory markers in the body. Seed oils are going to kill you, this or that. Now, Chick-fil-A was under some fire at the time because they do use a fair bit of seed oils within their products. Uh, so not only did I want to do a diet that was a little bit unconventional, where people look at fast food, a lot of people have that black and white thinking where if you eat any fast food, you're not going to be healthy or be able to kind of build the aesthetics that you want. I also wanted to take it a step further and see what would happen to my labs along the way. So I did labs at the beginning of the diet, labs 8 weeks in, and then labs right before I went on stage over that 16-week duration. And then I thought it would also be fun to do DEXA scans at Wheaton College along the way, but then also assess how I felt, how my energy levels were, which for most people usually drastically reduce when they're in that type of caloric deficit, getting stage lean.
Mhm.
So we know that obviously the satiety importance of food for being in a deficit, like that matters a lot. I wanted to see what would happen in that regard as well while being on Chick-fil-A.
So that's an awesome experiment. Obviously, like you've been doing well, let me like we'll pivot a second. How long have you been into like bodybuilding type of stuff?
Yeah, so I started working out when I was 12 years old. Uh, my friends and I grew up in a neighborhood where there were 8 Michaels that lived next to each other, all the same age, and we all wanted to be the most jacked, the best at sport, etc. So we got into YouTube. That was the PubMed of the day for a 12-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And we started watching people that were jacked and tried to mimic and copy. And we kind of trained like bodybuilders, and we got a lot of things right, even starting at that age, as far as specificity, progressive overload is concerned. Flash forward a little bit, mostly trained for sports, played football in college, had too many concussions, got into powerlifting, did what I wanted to do within powerlifting up until I was 23 years old. And then from there, shifted into bodybuilding, did my first show during the COVID year in 2020. I did a show I don't really count as a show because I didn't know what I was doing when I was 19 years old. I just graduated high school. But yes, from 2020 on, I've been kind of fully vested into bodybuilding.
I love it. So I love that story. That overarching story is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and so okay, going back to the experiment of Chick-fil-A, right?
Hmm.
What did you find? Like, what did your labs do? You know, what were your energy levels like? How did that show eventually go after you ran the experiment?
Yeah. So if I recall correctly, over the 16 weeks, I believe I started at about 239-pound body weight. I got down to 198-pound body weight. So I lost about, what is that, 41 pounds over the 16 weeks, which is a little bit aggressive. Typically, we recommend cutting no more than about a percentage point per week, slowing it down as you get leaner to minimize lean tissue loss. What was interesting was on the DEXA side of things, I added 5 pounds of fat free mass while losing all of that body fat. Uh, and now part of that was prior to starting prep, I wasn't doing everything perfectly. The stimulus of training, I was training more for strength, which was fun. I'm a big believer, just like you, and you want your training to be fun and match what's providing you that dopamine for that time period.
Yeah,
So I was very sensitive to hypertrophy training,
yeah,
which is probably one of the reasons that happened. Uh, and then I was also more locked in terms of consistency, hitting my protein because everything was perfectly logged. And it was actually really simple in that regard because Chick-fil-A's got like 10 things on their menu.
yeah,
So
yeah,
decision-making fatigue was about zero. It wasn't like, what am I going to go eat today? It's like, oh, it's Chick-fil-A. There's probably going to be chicken involved. Um,
yeah.
Now, on the lab side, that was also interesting. So I would measure my blood pressure every day. We'll start there. My blood pressure, both systolic and diastolic, dropped by about 20, which was pretty substantial. My blood pressure was almost low by the end, and that's pretty normal when you see that type of reduction, as we know in body fat. Now, what also was interesting though is my sodium intake was a lot higher on Chick-fil-A, but I was getting a fair amount of potassium just from the chicken itself,
Hmm.
because again, that was a lot of the diet,
Hmm.
which we do know based on recent studies that have been published. When males up their sodium but double potassium, blood pressure tends to decrease. Uh, my blood glucose went down substantially. Uh, Now, the coolest measurement, the one that might throw some people, was my C-reactive protein for inflammation. By show day, it was about zero. It was like 0.02 or 0.03. And again, most of my fats were coming from seed oils. Now, of course, we know based on a lot of the literature that's been published by Tufts, um, seed oil does not seem to increase inflammatory markers. In fact, compared to animal saturated fat, it animal saturated fat increases inflammation a lot more. So that wasn't really surprising to me, but it was still cool to see that. And then my high density lipoproteins went up by about 50%, the good cholesterol.
Yeah. So like on the surface, a lot of people will be like, this is going to be bad for your labs. It's going
Yeah.
to be bad for you in general. But honestly, like, and again, we'll stress to people like, there's a lot going on, you know, in
Mhm.
human physiology, and nutrition. Like, this is why it's really easy to attach, like somebody comes out and says this is the boogeyman of nutrition,
Yeah.
and then you kind of are like, well, do you know, like things aren't always that clear, right? You're also
Yeah.
you're well-trained human being with a lot of muscle mass, right? A lot of good things happening, but and you're also like kind of utilizing, like you're really understanding like your total calories, your macronutrient intake,
Mhm.
and you're at least controlling for probably your micronutrient intake to some extent as best you can in the circumstances too. But all that to say, like you use Chick-fil-A to prep for a meet, and a lot of like some seemingly good things seem to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was like pretty neat. I came in first place in the bodybuilding show. Backstage, people were a little confused as I was peaking with Chick-fil-A. The hardest part of the diet is Chick-fil-A's closed on Sundays. So
Uh,
I would buy all the food for Sunday on Saturday. I remember we went to a bunch of weddings during that show prep. We were traveling a lot. So Chick-fil-A was in my carry-on. So that would always weird out the TSA people because I always get pulled for my creatine being in there.
yeah.
Creatine, if you didn't know, it if you have a high dose of it, it will throw off the explosives alarm through
Mm.
TSA. So I've been like double pat down for explosives before because of my creatine. So then they see the Chick-fil-A too. Uh, but
Dude, that is awesome though. So, okay, I mean that story and that overarching concept is amazing. So, like kudos to you. Coming back to like just general, like I think one of the awesome things, I'm not a bodybuilder in any way, sense of the word, I probably should
oh,
go to
you're
a
jacked, man.
I appreciate that. You're too kind. But no, but one of the things I think about the gym, and I think you figured this out at a young age, is just like how empowering it is, right?
Yeah,
It's also kind of overwhelming because, like,
yeah.
so much of the fitness narrative and the nutrition narrative is like
Mhm.
speed, right?
Yeah.
What have you kind of learned? How old are you now?
30 years old.
So you over the 18 years that you've been like training, like give us a sense of kind of the lessons you would give to a fitness newbie when it comes to like strength training and nutrition and some of these things. And they can be honestly kind of overarching, but also some like what matters in the like the small things. Cause like small things
Mhm.
do matter, right? But it's
Yeah.
a lot of times you got to get the big things right first, right?
Yeah, so as far as the big things, I think you and me both agree on this is consistency is the name of the game. And then consistency is only realistic in praxis if you're enjoying it,
Yeah.
if you're having fun. So I coach a bunch of people I coach CrossFitters, high rocks athletes, marathon. And I always tell people there's no goal that's better or worse, whether it's the 60-year-old grandma that wants to be there to show up for her kids. It's the D1 athlete that wants to be the best athlete in the world. It's the 40-year-old business guy that just wants a little bit more energy at work. Um, find a reason for why you want to train that you can tie like purpose towards, and then set the training up around that and make it in a way that's feasible, doable with your schedule, where you're having fun. It's not something that's taking away from your life, but just adding joy. I
Yeah.
think that's what matters most on the training front. On the nutrition front, we're really big on behavioral change. So a lot of people we discuss nutrition with, we're not having them calculate calories, macronutrients. Uh, we're looking for basic ways to kind of build these daily rituals or habits where maybe they're incorporating an extra protein source each day. Um, maybe they're trying to incorporate a vegetable. Maybe they put the vegetable that they like the most next to the box of cookies, and then they pair those two together so that they're building in a happy habit and they're tying it to something that they already really enjoy. Uh, so I would say we know that in order for things to change, something must change, but we don't have to see drastic change to see change.
Like there was a lot of really good wisdom in there, and like it's this I keep coming back to more and more. I read a book recently. Well, I've read this book multiple times. It's called Siddhartha by Herman Hesse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's essentially about like the journey. Like you can't give anybody wisdom. You kind of can't
Yeah.
teach anybody anything. You can be a teacher, right? And you can
Yeah.
try to create the lessons, but like, and man, I think we see this all the time in the gym. Like you can set somebody up for like a good squat, but like if they never internally like
Yeah.
try to learn it, right? They're not going to get where they want to go. And like it's
100%.
there's like a mentality, and it's the same thing with like nutrition, because it really can be kind of whatever you want to make of it, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't have to be perfect. Like, man, I eat a bowl and I eat a bowl of vanilla ice cream every night, and like
Same.
you know, and it's like you know why? Because it actually helps me like maintain discipline throughout the
Yeah.
day, right? And then it's like I know I get like my little treat, but
Yep.
and also vanilla ice cream is pretty damn good. And
It's amazing.
yeah, so there's also just a certain amount of like we have to help people create like flexibility in all these
Yes.
things, both training and nutrition, so that
Yep.
it fits into life. But the problem in like social media has become both good and bad, right?
Yeah.
It's you're exposed to like I'm literally exposed to like Mike Menzer content from the 1980s or whatever,
Yep.
right? And uh but it's also like, man, you also are exposed to some guy who could just be trying to sell you something you don't need or scare you or
Yeah.
XYZ, right? How do you help people navigate like when you're working with them, how do you help people kind of navigate some of the expectations and maybe like some of the information that they might be exposed to?
Yeah, so with expectations, we generally know what is possible. We'll explain trade-offs to people, and based on their current lifestyle, based on their changes, we generally have a general idea of what they can expect. But we do like to preach that the journey is the destination. Uh, Even if someone meets the best expectation outcome possible, that never is worth it if the process itself is miserable.
Yeah.
So most of the people I've been working with in nutrition, we've been working for 1 to 2 years now, and they start to get it where we set weekly goals up. We kind of break things into chunks. We take a very phasic approach. So, like for example, if someone wants fat loss, it's realistic to expect that we could lose 0.5 to 1% on the average per week. We kind of look at their patterns. We find a way to kind of put them into the bracket that makes that happen in a very feasible way. And then we kind of identify obstacles in the coming week and then find ways to navigate and look at trade offs so that we can make the best decision going into each week. Um, so typically when we do that approach, people do kind of hit whatever percentage basis goal they have. And by kind of laying it out up front, what those percentages look like and what to expect, I think that empowers people where they have more belief. So they're more likely to do it. But it also sets them up where they know this isn't like a quick fix. This is like a lifetime journey where we're trying to make a little bit of progress day by day, and then people kind of find joy and dopamine within the process.
Yeah.
Um, so
I love that you've utilized the understanding of like humans have to get the dopamine hit to keep pursuit of
yes,
hard stuff, right? And
yeah,
like tell me more about like you know why you seek hard stuff and how that helps you as a human.
yeah. I mean, to be honest, I don't love hard stuff. Um, but I like stuff where I'm having fun, where I'm finding enjoyment. So like I do show preps, not to I mean, most people would look at a show prep and say that's like really hard, you're limiting yourself. I think it would take more discipline for me to not do it. I do it because I don't know, it gives me a goal, something to shoot towards. It's something where I can get very nerdy and scientific, which I like. So I guess my recommendation with the hard stuff, or what is seen as hard stuff, is do something that's extremely intriguing that like piques the interest side of things.
Hmm.
Um, and that dopamine then that you get from doing the hard thing, it's sustainable. It's something that you get a little bit of each day instead of just like a one-time surge that quickly dissipates and then you're like, now what? What's next?
Dude, I think like a lot of our woes are just this lack of an understanding. I mean, and it's so I said this, I like made a voice note to this morning.
Mhm.
It's not that the hard stuff has gotten harder. It's
Yeah.
that the easy stuff has become so easy that our choices
Yes.
go towards ease, right?
Yeah.
Like you know, man, because you started training with your buddies at 12. I was
Yeah,
super self-conscious. Like I had this perception that I was gonna be strong, and then I went in the weight room and I just didn't know how to move, right? Because
sure.
I was kind of like I was a active kid. I like worked, I mowed lawns, and I was like carrying stuff around. And it wasn't that like I wasn't like strong, but like when you put a barbell in like a kid's hand, it kind of becomes like clear how not coordinated you may be, right? Like learning to
Yeah.
coordinate that stuff.
It's
And
like
also,
learning your first Romanian deadlift. It's
dude, yeah, and it's like it doesn't look like that hard of a movement, but it's like
yeah,
you put it in somebody's hand, and if you don't have a few good instructions and maybe some setting them up for success,
yeah,
you just, a lot of stuff can happen, right? And I also think about coaching in that light because like a lot of me is just trying to be the coach that I wish I had at 15 years old,
yes.
right? Um, but it did teach me like running became a thing I could just do that I
Mm,
enjoyed it. Like it was weird.
yeah,
At first it was really hard, but like I also wanted to make the soccer team. So I had a goal and then
yep,
like you got to make this time but then I just threw ACDC in my ears and just hit the pavement and I like got a lot of gratification out of the process.
yeah,
That like how do you help people and you mentioned a little bit about it. You like break it down,
yep,
you create structure, but like
yep.
how do you help people maybe find the enjoyment in the process and also like not feel
Mm,
restricted because that's like the
yeah,
overarching narrative about nutrition is like, oh, you got to restrict yourself, right?
yeah. So I think a lot of it, I mean, there's gonna be times, and I'll be honest with clients. Like whenever someone has a goal, it starts with inspiration.
Yeah,
And then there's gonna be times of flex discipline. There's going to be times when it's easy, that's called motivation. And then when enough time goes by, you have consistency built, which turns into habit and maybe passion. But it takes a very long time, like you said, to get to passion, where it was harder first, and then eventually you just enjoyed it. So what I'll usually tell clients is if they're going through a time where they feel like they're struggling a little bit, and you can only exhibit discipline for so long, maybe a couple days, but if they do it, when you get back by yourself, give yourself a pat in the back. Because trying to encourage clients to become very introspective with how they feel within each moment, not running away from those feelings, not running away from those emotions, but kind of sitting with it and asking self, what is this telling me? What is this teaching me?
yeah,
And then when they get into that run where you see this all the time with clients you're working, when there's nothing that could stop them, they're in that flow state. Take advantage of that because that allows the discipline muscle to kind of recharge.
yeah,
And then what I'll tell clients is, let's say they like go off the walls one day, I'll tell them that's okay. But usually what I'll do is I'll say to them if it's on the nutrition side, but I bet it tasted amazing. I bet it was awesome. And then they shift from that negative thinking in their head of, oh my gosh, why did I
yes,
do that? To, you know what,
yes,
that was a delicious memory. That
yeah,
was something that brought me so much joy. Now, maybe the client had something, a lot of something that they really didn't want to. And they're like, yeah, it wasn't even worth it. I'll be like, well, that's helpful too, because now you know in the future, that item just wasn't worth it.
yeah,
So what
yeah,
I sometimes do with a lot of my clients, I think it's helpful. And I do this with myself. Is I'm a wannabe food critic.
yeah,
So each time I eat something that's like maybe off plan, I'll rate it in my head. I'll pretend to be like some French Michelin star
dude,
taste tester, and if it's not a 7 or above in the enjoyment factor, I'll like go and like not spit it out really, but just say, you know what, my normal dieting food tastes just as good as that. So I don't like I learned something here. I like probably don't
yeah,
really want to eat that as much in the future. But if I'm at like a Graham's ice cream and I eat their ice cream, it's delicious. I'll be like, you know what? That's an A plus, 10 out of 10. I'm gonna get another scoop because that's providing satisfaction. And then we live in the all or nothing persona. So I think a lot of times for clients, they go way off, they like skip workouts, or maybe they skip on their nutrition. That's okay. Tomorrow is a new day.
yeah,
Enjoy the food, maybe plan. You know, on a Friday night or a Saturday night, you're going out, you're gonna have a bunch of food. On Friday, just make your food for the following day. If you're logging at a fitness pal, log it preemptively. And then that way it's just easy. There's no decision-making fatigue. You have the food ready, you have the food prepped, and you just kind of get back on track. One of my favorite nutrition experts, he's published 80 papers in PubMed, Dr. Nathan Jenkins. He
mhm,
said that that's kind of one of his strategies. And what he'll do is he'll know when he's going to go have a bunch of fun food with friends and he's going to love it. And he's going to enjoy it. but he also knows what he's going to have the following day. And
Yeah.
the answer to that is the following day is not fasting. The following day is not eating nothing. The following day is giving the body the sustenance of which it needs to have as much energy as possible. And then the other item that I'll share with clients is if they maybe eat a ton of food or they go off way off plan, I'll usually say, well, you know what? That was a great investment in your energy for tomorrow's workout.
Yeah.
But let's shift the negative thought of like overdoing it. And let's just say you're just investing in your power, your strength, your mojo. That's what Andy, one of our coaches, and I did this past Sunday is we got a couple large pizzas from Nemic Bros. Incredible. The next day we knew we had legs. It was both of our best leg day probably in the last 6 months. And we kind of expected that to happen. And we were like just like praising the pizza people. Uh,
Yeah. Dude, I
so
love that.
those are a couple items.
So yeah, you hit on so many good things there. I think the ultimate thing that I kind of always am just thinking, it's like you're just trying to learn. Like you're just trying to
Yeah.
create the networks in your brain that like, what unfortunately a lot of people have learned is like, oh, too much food or food bad, right? Or that
Yeah.
type of food bad, right? Or or their mom was on a constant diet kick and like she never, but
Mm,
she was also, unhappy and then
yeah.
was using food as comfort, XYZ, right? But like you're just trying to learn strategies and then implement those strategies. It's just practice, right? And
Yeah.
practice and trying over and over again. And then you're gonna learn. Like I honestly just think like if you just keep practicing, don't get too down on yourself.
Yeah.
Have an orientation, a lot of good things are gonna happen. So I know you gotta go shortly, but I want to wrap up kind of just with your big 2 to 3 tips for people for like success in
Hmm.
in their fitness and nutrition and maybe just their overarching health journey. Like if you were gonna, be like, these are the things that I think are the practices that you should have, what would they be?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things to think about, and I like simple. So simply put, to kind of get rid of like some of the negative food noise, what I usually will recommend to clients is try to have something with protein at each feeding. That's going to move you closer to your goals. We know when I've talked to probably about over 1,000 people on nutrition, what I find is the most common thing that can really move the needle the most is just finding ways to incorporate more protein into their nutritional practice. Find a fitness pursuit that is intriguing that you want to learn more about. That's going to kind of challenge you on multiple levels, but also you think could be fun that you could commit to and go for it. And then just build the training around that. And then the final thing is give yourself grace. It's okay for goals to change. It's okay for things to not always go right. It's okay to feel aches and pains. This is fine. Like you said, we're always learning. Use that as an opportunity to learn, and then just that'll keep you consistent, which we know is the name of the game in the long run.
Love it, man. All right, if you're you're on death row here, Mike. Well,
Yep.
what's your last meal?
Oh, not easy. So I'm gonna give you my 2 favorite food items I've ever eaten in my life.
Okay.
One was Sukiyabashi Euro in Japan. They made that documentary called Euro Dreams of Sushi. It's on Amazon. Dude dedicated his life with the philosophy of Ikigai towards sushi.
I love
Uh,
it.
that was probably the best meal I've ever had. I remember taking my first bite and all my arm hair stuck up. I just started giggling. And I think,
That's
again,
wild.
I was like the crazy big white dude. There's like 6 chairs in that little sushi place, and they're looking at me like, what is wrong with him? But yeah, Sukiyabashi Euro sushi. And then number 2, to finish it off, we were just in Portugal. We went to this place called Lando Chocolate. All they serve is a chocolate cake slice. New York Times put it as the best chocolate cake in the world. I was skeptical. That's a high ceiling. Ashley and I both bit into it with our Fairlives paired with it. And I got the same feeling taking that bite of that stupid little simple chocolate cake that I got from the Euro sushi place.
Dude, that's
It was like a brownie bottom with some ganache, cocoa powder, perfectly balanced. I put on my food critic head, and Ashley did too. And we both said there's nothing that you could do to improve this. You don't need ice cream with it. You don't need anything else. Anything else added to it would bastardize and pollute it. Perfect chocolate cake. Lando.
amazing. Dude,
Worth a trip to Portugal, Lisbon, and
worth
if
the trip. All right, man. I
what
want to go
about
to
you?
Portugal. I'm like a simple man. I mean, those sound amazing. I will say that we hiked Yosemite a couple years
Yeah.
ago, and we had like it was so good, dude. I had I don't even know why it hits, but I had like this. It wasn't a pot pie, but it was like
Yeah.
pot pie innards with like a super flaky crust
Oh,
over the top of it. And then we had like I had like a brownie a la mode. Like, and it's I think it was just this is the power of food and like the experience of
yeah.
like hiking Yosemite and coming off of it. And but that whole trip, then we went to wine country and then we went to this place called Bodega Bay and I got really good clam chowder and like a whole loaf of sourdough. So
Oh, I love clam chowder. I'm from
dude,
Massachusetts, so
it was so good. So, but then if it was like if I just had a good ribeye and like some mashed potatoes and then some ice cream at the end, that would be a pretty good day too. So,
yeah. I mean, the key is death row. You just go to an all-you-can-eat sushi place,
dude,
and you never
yeah,
check out, and
yeah,
then the meal lasts forever. So
I love
yeah,
that. You've clearly thought about that question.
that's how I would break the cycle of having to die, which like that seems not very fun.
No,
So
100%. Mike Sell, where do people find you?
yeah, so you can find we have a couple of gyms in the Wien area: Midwest Strength Performance, FTX CrossFit, MSP Lyle. You can find me on Instagram, Mikey Swell. If anyone has, especially any like nutrition questions, you can ask and I'll answer for free. My DMs, Mikey Swell or Mike at mspgym.com. This is something that I love. I'm passionate. I want to see everyone as successful as possible. So if anyone's listening and watching, just use me. And if I don't know the answer, I'll admit that too. Because there's a
Sounds
lot of stuff
good.
I'm still learning and I don't know.
Dude,
So
that's the game. There's a lot of crap I don't know,
yeah.
but I also like to help people figure it out kind of together
Yes.
with you too, man. So yeah.
Amen.
I appreciate you, man. All right. Well, thanks so much. I'll have
Awesome.
this
Thank
out
you.
soon. And yeah, stay in touch, buddy. Peace.
Sounds good. Adios.